Good morning, YouTube. Today's video, I want to talk to you about hunting and when you should hunt, maybe when you shouldn't hunt. And I'll describe a few scenarios. And what I always say, especially when I go to clients and stuff, is don't hunt because you want to, hunt because it makes sense. What does that mean? Each property is going to be unique and different in how you approach the hunting on that specific property. Each property is going to have different access routes. Some may be easier than others. So you have to balance and think about your property in that way. You know, if I access it this way, how much pressure is it going to put on the property? If I access it this way, how much is it going to do, pressure-wise? So every time I go to clients, I'm always analyzing on the access routes and how much pressure it could possibly put on that area, on that hunting property. So, I always approach it that way. And, what does that specifically mean? So if, let's say you have, 40 acres and you only have one spot or one side of that property you can access to where it makes sense to, and it doesn't put pressure on the property. In that case, don't hunt because you want to, hunt because it makes sense. Hunt because you have a good weather cold front coming in, a storm had just passed. If you follow the moon, which I don't really focus on that too much, but some people focus on that, so maybe you're following the moon guide and different things in that manner, and there's a good cold front and it tells you to hunt. But have a purpose. Look at the weather. If you see that temperature dropping, big temp drops, weathers, cold fronts, snowstorms, before and after, all those are times when it makes sense to hunt. If you have a hard property to access and it's 95 degrees out with a bad wind, it probably doesn't make sense to hunt. But if it's 65 degrees out with good wind, cold front coming in, storm just passed, storm coming in, it's a good time to hunt. Especially if you get into the last week of October and you're in that pre-rut time, you're starting to see a lot of scrapes pop up. That would be a good time to hunt, especially the end of October, early November, you get a good cold front coming in, great time to hunt. It makes sense to do that. On those smaller properties, you have to pay attention to that more than if you have a larger property with multiple access points. So if you have 100 acres and you have 2 or 3 sides of the property you can hunt, and you have different borders and things where you can access, or you're accessing through a neighbor's property to get to yours, you're not intruding into a bedding area, then you can be a little bit more lenient on the way that you approach that hunting property. Now, you should always approach it in a manner where you have good wind, you're not walking through bedding areas, you're not specifically trying to spook deer. And this makes sense for the people that are focused on keeping low pressure. Some guys don't have that option and they just want to intrude on their property kind of willy-nilly and doesn't really matter to them, and that's perfectly fine. This is just tips for guys that want to keep the pressure to the minimum. They want to hunt specific days if they have that capability to. Some people work a lot of hours, you can't, you have to go when you can, and that's perfectly fine. I do that as well, a lot of times as well. You're just kind of taking that risk, hoping for a good outcome. If you pay attention to less stress on the property, focus more on those times that it makes sense to hunt, I feel in most cases you'll have a better result. And when you have a better result, maybe it's just seeing more deer in general, or maybe seeing a specific buck that you want to shoot, or you're just out there having fun. Whatever the case may be, paying attention to that weather and what your property is capable of allowing you to access, if that makes sense. Some properties you can access 4 points of 4 sides of it, north, south, east, west. You can access each one, and you can access that based on wind directions. Some property you have one point of access. Some properties you don't even have one, and you have to make one, which is still may not be the best option. So you have to just analyze your property, scope it out, scout it out, come up with a plan, and realize, hey, my property is very sensitive, there's a lot of hunting pressure around, I need to focus more on accessing it in a better fashion and focus on those best days to hunt when it makes sense. Hope this helps you guys. We're leading into hunting season. We're only, I don't know, Maryland here, we're about 3-4 weeks away. So any questions, comment down below. Willing to help you guys out. Also, check that video out right there and subscribe to the channel. See you guys on the next video.